I do want to address one other topic coming from Talladega. We've seen this play out twice this year. It was a fuel mileage race in some ways that the teams slowed down the pace to save fuel. And the reason they are doing this is so when you come onto pit road, you don't take as long to fuel the car, because the longer you take to fuel the car, the more spots you give up on the racetrack. It seems like an odd pairing of slowing down to gain spots, but that's exactly what is happening here, Brad Gillie. Is this a good thing? Is it bad? Is it neutral? Your thoughts about this strategy of slowing down on the racetrack at places like Daytona and Talladega to gain positions on pit road?
Well, look, if we're going to still employ this strategy, we need to take a 0 off of the race distance and make it the Talladega 50 instead of the 500, because we watched 450 miles of people just saving fuel. No, I don't think it's a good thing. And look, I don't know why an independent team or group of teams, or maybe some team that's been struggling, didn't decide, you know what, if they're all going to run slow, let's all line up and make them run full speed laps and throw them off of their strategy game. Because we heard earlier this year at Daytona, look, we could have qualified single car faster than what we were running in a pack. And I think a lot of that held true at Talladega as well. So I would have thought someone would have tried to have broken up the strategy of some of these major teams, but I think they've strategized it and engineered it to the point where now it's time for NASCAR to say, okay, we need to make some sort of a change, whether it's to the race car or something else, where the fuel mileage game is no longer a factor.
There was one point early in the race at Talladega that B.J. McLeod, Corey LaJoie, and Daniel Hemrick were running 1, 2, 3 because they did exactly what Brad said. They thought, if everybody else is going to slow down, we'll get to the front, get some TV time, get some exposure, and have people talk about us. Don't care what the rest of the field is doing. Is there a fix for this, Alexis? Is there something that NASCAR can do that says you can't do this?
Well, I heard a couple options. Rodney Childers said, well, why don't we just throw another stage in there, and then we'll make the stages the same number of laps as the fuel window. And then if you know when the fuel window, you know you're going to get a guaranteed caution at the fuel window, then there's no point in saving because everybody's going to pit at the same time. I don't know if that's the answer. I think, that probably will make things maybe even a little bit more boring to know exactly when the cautions are going to come and they're going to be able to fuel their cars. Somebody else said, okay, we'll make minimum speed. Have NASCAR say, okay, well, this is the minimum speed or the minimum seconds that you can run. And if you go any lower than that, then we're going to throw you out. I don't know if that's the answer either. I don't think that it is.
They throw out the whole field.
Right, exactly. I mean, and I think it's kind of interesting from a psychological standpoint, like you said, Brad, like how have they been able to get this entire pack to agree on this is very interesting to me.
And at some point, you lose the advantage because everybody's on the same strategy.
Right. Like, okay, so and then at that point it's like, okay, well, who can save the most? So that, that's the strategy then. Who's saving the most fuel? It's like the tortoise and the hare. Who's going the slowest to be able to win the race
exactly.
At the end?
I hadn't thought of it that way.
You know what I mean? And so it's an interesting strategy. I think of it though, we've always kind of had these type of strategies at these types of race. Either it's them going single file up against the wall because they want to save fuel that way, or they want to avoid any big accidents, so they just all ride around. I'd rather see what we saw yesterday than see that.
I would too.
Or drivers that are like, oh, okay, well, I know a big one's going to happen, so I'm just going to go to the back, and I'm just going to ride around in the back because I don't want to get caught up in a wreck. I mean, it's not the entire field doing it, but it's the same kind of mentality, And we've kind of always had some version of that at super speedways.
Brad, are we going to see this when we go back to Daytona?
Well, I don't think anything's going to change this year. So, yes. And even though Daytona is a 400-mile race when we go back there, I don't think that's going to change because nothing is going to change with the race cars unless Goodyear found some sort of a way to create very excessive tire wear and force the teams to have to change tires, because if you notice, that's not really something that they had to do yesterday as well. So I think at least for the time being, we have what we have. But if there is a way that NASCAR can make it to incentivize wanting to run up front, then that's going to probably give us more of what we want.
What is the answer to that, Brad? Do you know? Do you have?
I don't know. I just talk.
Yeah.
I don't engineer.
I disturbed by this because I've always felt like the absolute bedrock races in this sport, for me as a consumer, were Daytona and Talladega. I throw Atlanta in the mix now because of the type of racing that you're riveted to it, and this slow down strategy has taken some of that away because there were only 4 cautions at Talladega. Not that I want to see a bunch of cars crashing, but that's not indicative, and 2 of those were stage breaks.
If you were a casual fan, though, tuning in yesterday, if TV didn't tell you what was happening, would you have known?
No, I would not. I would not have known. I don't know that it negatively impacted the race as much as some people let on because the cars slowed down. Visually, I couldn't tell you that they were going 3 seconds slow. So maybe this is much ado about nothing.
Maybe.
It possibly could be.